to the Wall Street Geek, where fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Well, you can't fool me twice because I'm a Wall Street geek, and so are you, because we're better informed about important money matters. Now, in my last video, I shared 4 key investment principles for building wealth over the long term. Using a tax-advantaged account, starting early to stretch your time in the market, dollar cost averaging, and managing the risk of your portfolio of investments. It's synonymous to learning a foreign language, so in that sense, we've covered some of the basics, like learning how to say "s'il vous plaît" or "donde está el baño?" But the basics only take you so far. Now, once I visited Mexico with Habitat for Humanity in college, was in the middle of the field, and needed to use the restroom. Now, imagine if I only knew how to say "donde está el baño?" where's the bathroom, and not how to use it in the context of finding a bathroom. Say that someone responded, "It's around the corner through the second door on the left." If I didn't understand directions in Spanish and other elements of finding a bathroom, like "I'm lost" or "ayúdame, help me," knowing "donde está el baño" by itself wouldn't have helped me. In other words, you know the equivalent of "donde está el baño" after last week's video, but do you know how to put that knowledge into action for yourself? And that's what we're talking about today. Today's topic is about creating a financial plan. In other words, putting those 4 principles that I mentioned earlier in our last video to work for you for the long term. There's a difference between saving and saving for a goal. The latter needs intention behind it, or you won't meet the goal. When I say intention, I mean you need to be able to answer the question as specifically as possible: what am I trying to achieve by saving? I want to be rich, or comfortable isn't specific. What's comfortable? Is it comfortable to live on $50,000 a year in retirement? Is comfortable not having any expenses when you retire, like a house or a car note? Knowing that you can't reach those goals overnight, you need a roadmap for getting there. In particular, if you're Generation X and younger, which means you may not get a pension, and it's questionable if Social Security will be available. That roadmap needs to have some certainty and not rely on luck, like not saving for 30 years, then magic happens and you win the lottery. Like I said last time, the goal of winning the lottery is great, but you do need to plan just in case luck isn't on your side. With that in mind, here are 5 guidelines for putting a plan together for saving over the long term. There's a great deal more that goes into planning, but if you don't have the opportunity to work with an advisor like myself, these guidelines may help you get started planning for yourself. First, begin with the end in mind. It's like getting into a car. Why are you getting into the car? To go to the store, to drive your kids to soccer, to get away from your spouse because they're annoying you. So if, for example, you're saving for retirement, 4 questions you need to answer are: how much money do you need during retirement? How long do you have to save that money? What kind of lifestyle would you like to have? And how long do you need to fund that lifestyle? For example, perhaps you'd like to move to Florida and live on $50,000 a year for 30 years. Doing a straight calculation, not accounting for inflation, that means you'll need at least $1.5 million at your disposal over 30 years. That number, however, doesn't account for the cost of living increase that's going to occur over 30 years, which leads to the second guideline. Keep inflation from reducing the purchasing power of your savings. A box of cereal today costs $5. A box of cereal 30 years from now at 4% average annual inflation may be over $16. Lately, inflation hasn't been that high, but using an annual average of 4% is a good rule of thumb. Imagine paying $16 for a box of Captain Crunch. So when you save, you have to ensure that your savings are growing at a higher rate than inflation, while your savings are sitting on the sidelines waiting to be spent. This may already tell you that saving for retirement in a savings account, which today earns maybe 0.5% annually, means that you may have to put away extra just to maintain purchasing power of your savings. Otherwise, $1 you save at the beginning of the year in an account that's only earning 0.5% annually will not be able to buy as much the next year, because in the interim, the cost of goods and services went up due to inflation. As a result, we have our third principle. Understand the overall return of your savings. What if you want to save X amount of dollars in 30 years? Do you need an aggressive portfolio with a high double-digit return to help your savings grow, which means you have to stomach higher risk? Or do you prefer to invest conservatively, which means you may have to put away more to hit your savings target? You can estimate the return it'll take to get your money to double in a certain period of time with the rule of 72, which I discussed in my last video. And not that it's a recommendation, but some target date funds attempt to work the math out for you over time, as long as you choose the right fund for your time frame. A good advisor can also estimate the return that you may need in order to hit a savings goal. It's not enough to say I want to outperform the market. Well, what if your portfolio is averaging 6% annually and the overall market returned 2% one year? Great, you beat the market, but what if you need a 9% average annual return to stay on track with meeting your long-term savings goal? So while you beat the market, you still need to evaluate if you're still able to meet your goal. The fourth guideline is hand in hand with knowing the return you need in order to hit a savings goal. You also need to know how much you need to save on a regular basis. A very simple starting point may be to take your end goal and divide by the time you have to reach your goal. So if you wanted 1.5 million after 30 years of savings, not counting inflation, you need to save at least $4,200 a month. For many, that's a lot, which is why it's often encouraged to invest in the stock market, where you may get higher returns than in a savings account or with a CD and other fixed income like bonds, so that a smaller amount of monthly savings may grow with the return that you need over time. Now, we all wish that we could save and invest in a bubble without events beyond our control setting us back, but we all know that life happens. Which leads to our fifth and final guideline for developing your own financial plan. And that's the plan for the unexpected. What if you're investing and doing all the things you're supposed to be doing, and you have a year when the market crashes, like in 2007 and 2008? Or what if you lost your job and couldn't save for a year? What if your spouse passes away, leaving you to shoulder the majority of household expenses? Or what if you have a health emergency? A good plan includes ways to protect yourself from these events, whether it's with insurance or building a low-risk portfolio in the first place if you know that you can't take much risk with your savings, or dollar cost averaging as the market declines, or contributing more to make up for a lost year if you lost your job one year. Your plan needs that flexibility because life happens. Even the best of us don't always put planning at the top of our list. It can be a complicated and emotional process, and I've seen it be emotional for people. But like I always say, plan today, sleep tonight. If you can take care of the what-ifs while you have the resources and the time, your future self will be so happy that your present self cared enough to plan ahead. Listen, I've seen my share of surviving spouses come to my door after their spouse passed away with a shoebox of statements, not knowing whether or not they need to go back to work in their 70s. Don't do that to yourself, and don't do that to your family. Money isn't intimidating, but if it is, speak to someone knowledgeable that you know and that you trust. I hope this helped, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, this is the Wall Street Geek, hoping that this helped you to live long and profit. Take care. Bye.